And then I'm okay, so welcome to our session on conferences. Before we dive into what we're going to talk about, I'm just going to ask Marie Dubost and Paul Brand to introduce themselves. Welcome and thank you for doing this session. So Marie, first, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself as a facilitator.
Sure, absolutely. Hi, so my name is Marie. I'm working based out of Belgium, and I am like Mary. I'm a facilitator slash trainer slash consultant slash other things, but mostly I work with nonprofit and public sector entities, helping them develop strategies, developing training programs for them as well. And I specialize in a very small branch of facilitation, small because I think there's like very few of us in this space, but essentially translating accessibility standards and making sure that we develop our sessions in a way that it welcomes everybody with all abilities and disabilities and so on. And so this is what is exciting for me, because through IAF Belgium, I've been able to create this conference, which we'll be talking about later, through IAF Belgium, the chapter, which I've been a member of, I think officially since 2020, but I've been attending their events since, I think, 2016 onward. So yeah, that's for me.
Thank you. And Paul?
And I'm Paul. I'm one of 5 people of a very small management consultancy, and our work is mainly in public sector policy, complex decision-making, evaluation, those kinds of things, which tends to involve a great deal of group consultation, group working over extended periods, this kind of thing. And I accidentally fell into facilitation 35 years ago and never got out again. So I use it alongside and within consulting, and I do some facilitation just as a delivery on its own. And I'm in Manchester, and I heard of the IAF in about 1999, quite a way back. Didn't join. Came back to the UK after spending some time away, and got involved in a massive 3-year engagement, and happened to end up working alongside the then board member of the IAF, Simon Wilson. So we spent nearly 3 years working together on and off, and did about 100 and something events together, during which time, for some reason, I ended up becoming a member of the IAF and doing their accreditation and this kind of thing, I think partly through Simon's persuasion. And I got involved in the conference in the UK, in England, Wales, 2 years ago, when Helen was suddenly faced with having to make it hybrid. And I said, oh, I think I can work out how to do that. And then for the last 2 years, I've co-chaired the England and Wales conference with another one of our members, Camilla Gordon. So I've done 3, 2.5 I've been involved in planning and organising.
Great. Well, thanks for coming to share all your knowledge and wisdom and experience, both of you. And I should say, 3 of you know me already, but I'm Helen Jewell, and I'm part of the England and Wales, IAF England and Wales leadership team. And so what we're going to do this evening is I've prepared a load of questions for Paul and Marie. And we'll just kind of go through the questions, a little bit interview style-y, panel discussion. And if you have questions as we go along, please feel free to pop them in the chat, or if that's hard, if you're on a phone, Helen, I don't know how easy that is, then just shout out to us.
5 of us, you can just put your mic
there's
on.
only a couple of us, so yes. I think we'd like to have your questions as well. We've got Stuart joining us. And to start off with, actually, before we dive into those questions, I'm just going to ask you to pop in the chat or just let us know what you would like from this session, so that perhaps Paul and Marie can tailor some of their answers a little bit. So if you're thinking about conferences particularly, and welcome, Stuart, I can see you've just come in. What would you like to know about the most? If you could just pop your ideas in the chat. Stuart, we're just warming up. Can you hear us? Hopefully you will be able to hear us. Just give you a minute, but yeah. Oh, you can hear us loud and clear. Brilliant. So we were just doing a little bit of introductions and yeah, just wanting to know what you would like to know about conferences. Any thoughts? And Stuart, also, if you want to introduce yourself, please feel free. And while you're writing your what you'd like to get out of this session in the chat box, I am going to ask first Marie and then Paul to just share a few photos, give us a little bit of a flavour of the conferences that you're going to be telling us about. So, oh, Stuart, you're with baby, fair enough. Yeah, babies don't join in these sessions very well, do they?
I'm having to have babies, cats and dogs in my sessions, Helen.
Maybe your baby's got some good questions. So yeah, Marie first, it'd be really nice to ask you if you could just share a few photos and give us a little bit of a flavour of the IAF Belgium conference, just to kick us off.
Sure. I think you should be able to like sort of see me somewhere on the side of the brilliant. So the genesis of this conference. So we didn't call it conference. We actually called it a facilitation forum. This is the website that we had designed for it. And the idea was that we wanted to bring together clients of facilitation and facilitators together. So we brought these 30 gorgeous beings together for one full day. And the idea was that we want to provide opportunity not just for learning, but also for experiencing facilitation. So to give clients and facilitators a chance to experience facilitation methods, to experience essentially the power of facilitation through various methods that they are looking at. And so we want this came from a number of conversations we had with our members, with the chapter, where it became very clear that in order to share the power of facilitation to the world, we need to give people a chance to experience it, because many of us became facilitators because we saw a brilliant facilitator in action and we realized, wait, this is a skill set. You can learn this. You can get a profession out of this. And then you can use these kinds of methods to have, really effective, transformative meetings. And so we thought we need to find a way to share this with people. And so this is how this all came about. So I'm also a member of the leadership of the IAF in Belgium. So I took the lead along with two co-organizers to bring together people and to figure out a way that we could do this and to organize a conference, because we usually have meetups and usually it's in the evening and it's like for a short amount of time. But here we wanted to offer people like a really diverse program and give people a chance to learn from one another and experience concretely a sampler essentially of methods and have really powerful conversations, but also a bit of networking, sharing, and being able to to also to get to know each other and to get to see how vibrant of a community we have with facilitators in Belgium.
Nice, thank you. I love those photos as well. It's really, really good to have some sort of good evidence of what you did. Thank you, Paul.
I'm going to ask Marie a question there. Was this the first IAF Belgian conference, or have you had them in previous years? I didn't remember.
We had never had an event of this size. We had always fantasized, but the chapter was founded in 2016. And then, the community grew and grew, and then COVID happened. So obviously, aside from online events, we hadn't had the chance. So this was in fact our first sort of like big full day event that we had ever had in this way.
So we've got a nice story flow here, because Helen and I were talking the other day about how did England and Wales end up where we are with our conference, which I'll show you in a moment. And the story started very similar. England and Wales didn't have a conference. They had meetups. Then I think you had an evening. Then I think you expanded to a whole day. Helen, 2019 was the first year they went and said, let's make this a full conference and do 2 days with an overnight. 2020 got cancelled because of COVID. 2022 was 2 days, but it was hybrid. It was odd because it was 3 tracks, which was the next development going up. one of which was hybrid. One was completely in room and one was offline. And then the last 2 years, we've gone back to fully in person, 2 days. And let me just share a few photos, which will look very much like photos of people at the conference. Where's the button gone? Oh, just my poor Zoom skills. I spend so long in Teams. So the first bit of the story, have you got some pictures there?
Yeah, we can see them.
So the first picture of the story is, this is the 2024 conference. This was April this year. And in that growth from very much where Marie's described, where we were 4 or 5 years ago, we were growing from something which was about the size. We had 110, I think, 117 on the peak day, with most people doing 2 days, some people doing 1 each day. A couple of things sort of stories to tell. You notice a few of these people. Let me just find. This is Dedi. So Dedi came from Tanzania to come to our conference to take interesting learning back to what they're doing in Tanzania, and was great. And we didn't plan for this. We suddenly found we had 2 people coming from 2 people who work in the Lebanon, but came over to share. Dedi, we had people from Italy. And so we've had a little bit of, as it's grown, we've ended up with some people coming from other countries. So Sue Bird from Belgium was there the previous year in 2023. A very important to the British conference, I have to include this, is the raffle. It's become a vitally important part of the conference. And there are prizes, they're all given by people. What happened this year was interesting, with people offering services. So a raffle that included 6 coaching sessions or a free place on a training course, this kind of thing. Stuff which people would find more useful, though also people giving away books and that kind of thing. But the idea that there was some flow out the back end of the conference through the raffle was something interesting that emerged this year. There was, of course, eating and drinking. The setting we've got at the moment is quite interesting. We will probably move in another year. But this is actually a Quaker meeting house in the middle of Birmingham, just down the road from where I am now. And so we have the plenary sessions in this big room with a big open space and benches. And then we have a load of meeting rooms that you can see off the corners of this, which are much more standard. There's some tables, or we can have a standard meeting space. So we have a variety of working spaces. Some of them are very small workshops. Some of them get very, very full indeed. Because we don't pre-book, even at this size. We're just at the limit where we're trying to decide whether we have to get people to register for sessions or not. Because, there were a couple that were very oversubscribed. And I show that because I think one of the things we're now doing is learning the problems of growing pains. Running it for 117 people is not like running it for 70 people, is not like running it for 20 people. And we're trying to, and now for this next year, trying to work out the wrinkles for if we have 150 next year, what would have to change. Variety of stuff. We had we had someone who composed a song about facilitation during the session. We had people doing very deeply reflective stuff, very intrapersonal, reflective, personal development things. And we basically split it into 4 kinds of sessions. So we had a track which was skills and tools, people teaching how to do something. We have a personal development track, a lot of introspective stuff, caring for yourself, developing your own skills, that kind of thing. A business development track, because a lot of our people are freelance and therefore we're struggling with also trying to run a business. And then for the last 2 years, we've also had a track very generally called DEI. So anything vaguely related to inclusion, accessibility, and so forth. So that's the kind of thing we've run for the last 2 years. There they all are again, I guess. That's one of the ladies from the Lebanon. And quite a variety of people. So at this table here in that photo,
Paul, you're breaking up a bit. I don't know if
guy on the for. Are you seeing a picture?
Yeah, we can see a picture. You're a bit difficult to listen to. You're breaking up a bit.
I apologize. I'm not sure. Maybe if I turn my video off.
Yeah, perhaps that might
I'm
help.
sitting on the hotel Wi-Fi. Is that any better?
Yes, I think so.
So the guy on the left is an independent. The lady in the mustardy top looking straight at us, she's a senior leader in the Department for Environment in the UK, but she's actually an academic. She's on secondment there. The guy on the right, I don't know. The lady in the background with the silver hair, you can just see.
Mm-hmm.
She runs a whole thing to do well-being, which is all based around a thing called chouperie and silent discos and that kind of stuff. The lady standing up behind her is Camilla, who was my co-chair. She's working in things like charity development and philanthropy and facilitating groups in there. So quite a mix of different kinds of people. The last point to make probably is who comes. We've totted it up in the last couple of years. It's about 1/3 members of IAF. It's about 1/3, and that 1/3 is also 1/3 of our members from the country. It's about 1/3 what we would call friends. So they're people we already know who maybe they've been to meetups, maybe they came to the conference before, maybe they're involved in some way. And then it's about 1/3 people who we've never seen before who just signed up from the advertising, though a lot of them come because somebody else recommended it to them. So it's an interesting mix of what goes on.
And do you have a sense, Paul, of, so you've talked about where people have come from, like I know it's much more international now, and where people have come from in terms of membership or from the wider community. Do you have a sense of what types of facilitation the people that are coming sort of do or represent? Or
the range is from people who are social justice advocates working on an absolute shoestring for almost nothing in local teenagers with social behavior difficulties, all the way through to people like myself who work with major government departments on policy. Not so many people from big private sector companies, but some, or people who consult with them. Quite a lot of people working sort of somewhere in the middle of that. So I'm not surprised anymore. I'm always really curious to find out who the next person I speak to is going to be and what they do. Because all of them are working with some form of group of people in some context, doing something that they believe is worthwhile.
Nice. Okay. And Marie, thinking about, obviously much smaller, much earlier on in the sort of evolution of conferences. I don't know if you're thinking about having more, but what kinds of people attended your conference?
Sure. I think indeed we have a very wide practice of facilitation from there's a lot of NGOs and nonprofits in Brussels, and the conference was in Brussels itself. So we could see that in the attendance, but we also had a lot of people in agile facilitation, people working with sort of like leader, kind of technology consulting, one of those big ones that most people know about, as well as very small NGO or umbrella organizations. So we had a pretty wide variety of both of the practices of the facilitators and also of the kinds of we call them clients of facilitation, organizations who would be likely to either train their staff in facilitation or perhaps even to hire a facilitator.
Okay, so nice mix. And thinking about then the types of sessions then, and I know I've got a question, and then I can see Miriam's got a question that's kind of related. You, Paul, touched on the types of sessions, but how did that work for you, Marie? Did you have defined sessions? Was it one big session, obviously slightly smaller than the England and Wales one? How did that work?
So I put together a call for proposals, and so we put out a call for proposals for people, and essentially the criteria was we need to have interactive sessions, and then we wanted to make sure that we were looking at different dimensions. We had like sort of streams that we wanted to look at, addressing measuring for example, the impact of facilitation, interpersonal dynamics and so on. So we had a number of sessions, and the way we had it is we had some parts that were the big room all together, so 30 people together, and these were mostly for introduction, connection before content, the sort of like the in-between parts before and after lunch. And then we had parallel workshops. So we were able to break out the 32 people or so who joined us into parallel sessions so that we could have, and maybe some sessions had more like 8 people and some more sessions had more like 20 people. So kind of mix and match. But this means that there are facilitators were able to lead sessions with an average, let's say, of 15 people, which means a bit more cozy as well, but also able to go a bit more into content, but still be able to have like also small breakouts as well within. And we gave them slots of like 60 to 90 minutes to give them enough time to do something, but yeah, we wanted to have more workshops than less, so and then less long ones. So we had to kind of, because we had a lot of interest, so we had to kind of compose a program in this way.
Nice. Okay, so even though it's small, you've still got a lot of those different, some parallel sessions, some sort of whole group sessions.
Yeah, we were still able to have parallel sessions with a group of 30, because we wanted to make sure that our facilitators also, some of them, I mean, they do this professionally, with some people are maybe also like showcasing techniques, or kind of like still refining a technique that they're working on. So actually they appreciated that it's not like too big of a group, but you're able to play a bit more with 15, 20 people. And then obviously also the harvesting at the end was done with the full group as well. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. And then Paul, I know you were talking about the 3 or 4 tracks we had at the last session, the last conference.
We had more people and therefore more tracks. Almost exactly what Maria said. We ran sessions that were basically 60 or 90 minutes. We experimented last year with giving one of the afternoons a full 2 hours. I think the general opinion is we won't do that again, but we'll see. We wanted to try it and see if it created something different in a way. But 60 and 90 were our standard things. One of the difficult challenges we ended up with was getting people the right furniture arrangement they wanted. Even though we asked them when they offered to do the session, do you want 60, 90 minutes? Do you want tables? Don't you want tables? There seemed to be an immense amount of putting tables up and taking them down again, because it turned out that somebody didn't want tables. And that's just a problem of scale and the nature of the venue. I don't know about you, Marie, we also decided that we would provide potential resources. So this year particularly, we put a sticky wall up in several of the rooms and made that part of what we provided. Oh, we got somebody to give it to us free. We didn't pay for it. And, facilitation resources and stuff, we set them up in the room. So even if people did bring their own stuff, there was lots of, facilitation, bits and pieces. The last thing that was interesting that we did this year, that was otherwise exactly what you did, Maria, in terms of arrangements, was someone noted that we had quite a lot of people in our community, especially in the wider community, with neurodiversity. And so someone said, okay, we'll provide, hand fiddles and things to twiddle with on every table in every room, which was a very small thing, but the people for whom it was there found that very useful. And we also, again, this was a scaling thing, we actually made a chill out room, because we realized we would have people, once we got up to this sort of size, we would have people who just needed to escape the size of the people. So we had a quiet room with beanbags and this kind of thing. That was the first year we did that. And people were going in there, I stayed in there for a bit. People were going in there just for 30 minutes to, let their brain calm down and calm. And that was an absolute quiet room. It was not, you weren't allowed to go and do your Skype meetings in there. It was a silence room. and we're trying things like that, which are problems associated with having a larger group of people, which makes it noisier and bigger and this kind of thing. I'm going to pick up, looking at the questions here. Helly, we didn't have any panel discussions, but we can talk about that later from other contexts, if you like. The planning process Miriam's asked about, what did we do? We invited people to do a session. We got them to send in a little abstract and say which track would it fit within and what their needs were. Somebody then went through a very complicated process of deciding who got a place, but we gave most of them places. And we then offered a couple of webinars, just web spaces, I think 3-4 weeks before the conference, which were just open meetings like this, where any of the people doing the session could come along and ask questions. And that was particularly taken up by people who'd never been to the conference, because we had people giving sessions for whom it was their first conference. That was quite a useful thing. The other thing that you mentioned, Maria, with people perhaps showcasing something new, we had some quite nice experiences of people who perhaps were very early in their career, but were willing to have a go. And so we really tried to foster the, when we announced to people at the beginning of the first day, you might find yourself a session with someone who's much less experienced. And part of the community interest here is to then support that person, and you will learn something by doing it. And I know I can think of a couple of people who were terribly nervous and ended up running the most beautiful sessions and had their confidence boosted. One of whom I think has now joined the conference planning team for next year. So tones like that of a safe space to explore something new I haven't done in front of a client yet, I think is something you mentioned, Maria, that we've also found it's useful for that.
And just thinking, Marie, how was the sort of planning process for you?
So obviously, when you create a new conference, which is an iteration of one you've already had, you already have a sense of like how many people are going to show up and who are they and what is their knowledge levels and what are the expectations. And you expect that some amount of participants will be like a continuation of that. But obviously this was the first one, right? So indeed, also we had different streams because we also had streams where we wanted to make sure that some sessions were going to be friendly for like the less initiated to facilitation. Participants will be like a continuation of that.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I think I hear myself.
No, it's fine. I've just muted him.
And we also wanted to make sure that there was space as well for people with more advanced. So we also wanted to mix that up because we could not know necessarily how many people would come. And the way the event was structured is that we essentially so having put out the call for workshop leaders and having seen the interest, then the whole next step was okay. So I had created a website and so on to get people excited, promoting on social media. Because we had a third of participants who were actually clients, these were our clients. So there was also an effort from the committee members to invite our own clients to the conference, which can feel a bit vulnerable as well, because you're inviting your clients to a community of facilitators. What if they like the other facilitators better than I do? You never know. But I felt I knew that this was a safe, this was like a very nice space to bring people in, because it's about showcasing all the diversity of skill sets and knowledge that we have. And so we made a bit of a guess, an educated guess, that we had to break even at this number and that we could welcome maximum this many people, and then and we managed to meet our goals and more. So there was always a bit of a gamble when you create the first of, and then you're just like testing the market. And maybe the next conference will be a bit different. Maybe it will be maybe some part will be more focused for facilitators. We'll have to see. We can talk more about this, about the learning and what's next after.
Yeah, and I just wanted to that whole, like you said, you built a website. Welcome, Renata, by the way. We're just carrying on. So you built a website, and I was also thinking about Miriam's question about getting people to sign up. Like how, and the social media and all the rest of that, how easy or difficult was it to promote it and get people to come along?
I have to say that I've actually put the link to their website in the chat, and that's interesting for anyone. So it's just a very simple, like bare bones website with just a bit of information. I figured first it was important just to really get clear out the information out front. Who is this conference? We called it a forum because the alliteration with the facilitation forum. Who is this forum for? What can you expect out of it? And so on. And then we saw that actually we have a lot of very faithful, I would say, like members of our community and IAF members that we could always sort of like trust on to register. So a lot of people started registering early. I did also quite a lot of promotion as well on LinkedIn to get the word out. And then we made sure that we got the word out also to our community. We have about 700 people signed up on Meetup, which I guess you probably have a Meetup as well. So you know how fickle that can be. A lot of people sign up to a Meetup and they don't necessarily attend any event. But this also attracted quite a lot of people. So in addition to the presenters who got free attendance as well, and then they were participants in the other workshops. So we were able to, to fill our quota without too much difficulty, I would say.
Okay, nice. I guess if you've got that kind of community already there or clients, then obviously you've got, you're not trying to convince people that it's a good idea in the first place.
Yeah, I think it was a gamble. It was a calculated risk, I would say. Yeah.
I was going to ask, I can see Heleth has put a question in about do you have a project manager to support the organizing, and just, what kind of size team did you have behind the organizing, or was it just you?
It was me and two other people. So we were like three, and so three to evaluate the proposals, three to decide, okay, who do we keep on program, three to make decisions about the location and so on. So just 3 people for us for a conference of 30, 35 people. So I don't know what the ratio is for you, Paul.
Yeah, Paul?
We had in the last 2 years, so the most recent iteration of it, we had 2 co-chairs so that we could keep the ball rolling even if one of us was unavailable. Then we had a core group, I would say, of about 6 or 7 people gradually who were involved like all the way through. And we broke that off. So, 3 of them did the program development, someone did the venue, that kind of thing. And then as we got close to it, we had 3 or 4 more people who sort of came on board, really just to do all the little bits and pieces that needed doing to get it over the line. Very practical things like who was going to turn up and set up the venue, who was going to turn up and put signs up, who was going to print signs, we ended up with this massive list of lists that people then took off and said, oh, well, I can do that bit, I can do that bit. 2023, Camilla and I felt that very much we were on duty flat out for the whole 2 days, just running it. 2024, with that wider team, by the time we got to 8:30 on the first morning, Camilla and I were standing around in the foyer with nothing to do because so many people had volunteered to do a little bit. So that is possible. We are having a conversation now about if it got any bigger, would we actually need to take part of the revenue from the conference and pay somebody to do some of the sort of legwork stuff? And we haven't got there yet. What we might do, because we're talking about getting a virtual PA for the whole chapter, we might get a virtual PA and get that person to do just some of the legwork and the administration work and stuff. We'll see. But at the moment, it's very self-organized.
Okay. So there's lots of stuff obviously about the organization and how it's all set up. I just wanted to bring us back a little bit to the actual sessions, because I can see Miriam had a question about the most creative sessions you've included in the conference. Paul, can you cast your mind back and think about the most creative session?
The writing the song one was pretty creative, and that was very good. We had a couple of people who did sort of art-based things, so creating art, some of it very metaphorical art, if you like, but somebody did a very good one just on how to draw better flip charts, which was actually hugely useful to people. And then Catherine Wilkes will always do a silent disco somewhere, which isn't really one of the sessions. It's one of the lunchtime entertainments. One of the most creative things that's happened in the last few years is there's a small group of people who said, oh, we'll do the welcome and the badges. And this has now become this enormous 10-foot long table of crafting material, which you arrive and you make your badges. And in a sense, it's become, you know, a feature in the last 2 years of the conference.
Nice. Yeah, I love making the badge at the beginning. I love a good sticker session. And Marie, the same question to you. Most creative session?
I think they were all very interesting and creative in their own way. Probably the one, there was one that was very interesting called Unfold the Storms. And in it, people had to be crafty and explore like past memories and past lives. And that was a very interesting one, very different from the others. The most interesting creative and impromptu session we had is we had been lent this massive banner, this like the side of almost like a size of a house by a colleague from the Netherlands, and we needed at least 3 facilitators to build it together. I had really underestimated, like it had a whole scaffolding and everything. It's like a massive. It's a big banner behind the people, the photo of the people I showed.
That the Dutch had made.
Yeah, the thing that says, you know, is facilitation outcomes, is it good luck or is it good facilitation, essentially? And so this one was a impromptu team building activity for 3 of our colleagues, and that was really one of the highlights of the conference for them was building this massive banner together, and it was like really massive, kind of like to welcome people.
Nice. It's always interesting having the kind of like those extra bits on top of the actual, you know, given sessions, I guess. And do you still include open space? Because Paul, we did have that. We've had it a couple of times in England and Wales.
We did in 2019. We gave over a big 2-hour thing to open space. Don't think we did it in 2020 with the hybrid, did we?
No, I think that might have been.
I think we did it in 2019.
We did it in the online session as well, actually.
We did the online one. We haven't done a big open space thing in the last 2, but I know there's a conversation about whether what we do next year is swap that 2-hour session idea to be an open space session.
Yeah.
But I'm not planning it this year, so I don't know.
Health wants to know where we've also got a conversation about Wales. So we do, that's probably a side conversation, Health, about we used to have lots of meetups in Wales in person, and we don't actually currently have a in-person one in Wales, but Megan Evans used to run the meetups in Cardiff or thereabouts, I believe. Anyway, that's a slightly side conversation, but we'd love to have more of a conversation about it. Maybe.
The question when I first looked at it was, did you run any parallel sessions in Welsh?
Oh,
I misread the chat because my glasses aren't very good.
If you're offering, Helen, I wanted to come back to your question.
I do speak Welsh, actually.
Okay.
Wow. We'll do the Welsh language track next year.
One of the conversations we were having when we were setting up was actually about the Belgian chapter having at least 2 languages, and you said you did it in English, Marie, didn't you? We're do ours in English, but maybe we need to add a Welsh session as well. I was going to ask, come back to your question, Helen, about panel discussions and see if we have any advice on panel discussions. Or any thoughts on it? Marie, I'm going to come to you first on that one. Any thoughts on panel discussions?
We did not include a panel discussion in our conference. We have been toying with the idea of having a panel discussion with buyers of facilitation, just kind of have like because we have a different kind of profiles in Brussels. We have a lot of like European institution type institutional clients and NGOs and so on. But we did not have one for this conference. So I mean, I have generic advice for conferences, but not for this one in particular. No.
Helly, was your question about did we do any, or was it any advice on how to do them?
I was just, I wasn't really sure what, because I've been on several kind of scientific conferences before moving into this kind of role. So, and now I'm obviously doing more facilitation workshops and that kind of thing. And I was just, in terms of how to kind of, I don't know, your experience of navigating panel discussions, I guess. I don't know. It was just a bit off the top of my head. I was trying to think of something to ask.
Let's spend a couple of minutes on it. We didn't do any panel discussions in the last couple of conferences, but the 2019 conference, we actually had, and it goes to something you were talking about, Marie. One of the questions, the sort of central questions posed in the 2019 conference was, what do clients want from facilitation? And so we had 2 or 3 clients, and it actually opened the conference with basically a panel discussion with, I think, 3 clients, very different clients, talking about what they value in facilitation. And that was interesting because it set a bit of a tone, particularly for the first day of the conference, to remind everybody that, well, we're all very happy scratching each other's backs as facilitators, that thinking of the client perspective was important. And then those clients stayed, I think all 3 of them stayed at least for the first day and were therefore in sessions and experiencing it. One of them I know picked up 2 or 3 people's cards from there, and 5 years later is still giving work to those people and using them, is actually putting out, that client is putting out tenders for facilitation that require at least one of the facilitators to be either a member or a certified facilitator from the IAF or similar. That which was not expected, but they're using what they saw at the conference as effectively their threshold for, a way of buying facilitators, which I thought was quite interesting. In terms of doing panel discussions, I love facilitating panel discussions. The chief problem as ever is limiting the amount of time the panelists talk at the beginning, and then trying to just stand and host the discussions. One of the things that I've tried to do with panel discussions, if I can get it done, is to have a session with the panelists beforehand so they know what each other are going to say, simply to avoid the overlap and so they can feed off each other. You can't always get them to do it, but I find the panel sessions I've done with people like the Academy of Engineering and Royal Society and things, if I can get the panelists to confer beforehand, it makes it all more cohesive. And they also don't feel they have to say everything because they know that the person next to them is going to cover that bit. So it helps with managing them not going over the whatever you've given them, 5 minutes or 7.5 minutes or something. I don't know, Marie, if you or anybody else has any great advice on facilitating panel sessions, other than that's my 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it's really helpful for the panelists to have had a chance to talk to each other, but not to be so overly prepared that they have like a prepared statement, because then you can sort of feel that they're like reading from their statement and so on. And you really want it to be more like a dialogue than a series of like pronouncements. One thing I've also found really useful is to give the people in the audience very early on a chance to shape the question, turn to their neighbor, what would be a great question for this panelist, and so on, and just really make it all the more interactive. I know it throws a bit of a curveball to the panelists because now they're getting a question they didn't have in advance, but it also makes it I think a lot more lively and interesting and more interactive as well for the participants.
Great, thank you. And just so for this session, Helen, we've sort of got some questions that we crafted for Paul and Marie. So I'm half looking at those and half looking at your questions as well. And I guess it's a sort of not quite panel discussion, but trying to draw on that as a basic model. So
I'm just stealing that idea from Marie because I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Okay, I think about questions in the chat. Miriam's asked about social activities. What I know, Paul, you've talked a little bit about maybe not social, but sort of resting spaces and stuff within the conference. But I know there was also some social after the conference stuff as well.
This has sort of grown organically. The main thing that's happened is well, somebody calls it dine around. Someone tried to call it Facil Eat, which is really informal, but because we have the 2 days, on the day one evening, we get individuals we know, not some are organisers, some are not, to host dinner at a restaurant. It's usually in Birmingham somewhere. And we just put sign-up lists of about 10 people, 10 or 12. And we pre-book tables at a series of places, from pizzerias and curry things around the house. And we just have one person who's sort of vaguely hosting, which basically means they know where the restaurant is. And people sign up. And then it's a bit like going out for dinner with students. You know, they work out between themselves how they do it. We talked about actually bringing food in and doing an evening session or something, you know, it's like a party sort of thing in the evening, and actually decided that the change of venue was much better for people. So, and the dine around thing is quite scalable, because not everybody goes. Some people want to go and cool off in the hotel. So I think we set it up generally so we had enough sign-up sheets and tables that we'd booked to accommodate half or 60% of the people or something, seemed to be about right. And the other 40% were just desperate to go back and have a rest in wherever they were staying.
Yeah, some people don't want to do social stuff, do they? They just want to have a rest.
I don't think we do anything else social apart from that.
Marie, did you do any social stuff around your forum?
For sure. We had some social moments, but obviously it was we had planned it to be a conference that starts in the morning and finishes around 4:30, 5 p.m. and so on, knowing that people then have to run off to pick up the kids or do whatever they might have to do. We did make sure to provide opportunities for people to network, and we had a really nice cozy space where people could have a good we had a good lunchtime. We provided the lunch, the coffee breaks, and so on. So we gave people plenty of space also to socialize. But we did not necessarily, aside from the sort of get to know each other games, we did not really structure it all too much. And then people ended up going for drinks afterwards because we had a facilitator friend, colleague joining us from China and so on. So we were also catching up. But we indeed, we did not structure it just because 30 people, we could not necessarily know who might want to linger still afterwards.
Okay, thank you. So we've just got 5 minutes left of the hour, although we're going to leave the room open for half an hour longer if people do want to stick around. I do have to go in a few minutes, so I'm going to ask my last question, which is really about the lessons learnt. So Paul, I'm going to come to you first. If you can give us some key points that you think you or England and Wales, the England and Wales chapter has learnt from doing these conferences, if other people want to do them.
I think they may not be entirely lessons learned. They're choices we've made over the last 3-4 years, especially. The first one was we really wanted it to be accessible for as many people as possible. And that led to a number of choices. One was we want to make it as cheap as possible, even down to the level, and this is really a function of it's being a bit bigger, so it generates a bit of slack in the budget now, of having a community fund where anybody can in fact ask to come for free or whatever they can afford to pay, no questions asked. And we haven't made it any more complicated than that. We don't set any threshold. And of the sort of 2023 was 70, 80 people, and we had 4 or 5 of those. Last year was 117 people, we had 6 or 7. So far, we haven't had anybody who we think was swinging the lead and abusing that. They're genuine people who perhaps are working right down at social action level and have very little money to spare. But we try and make the actual conference as cheap as possible. So it's a 2-day conference. The most expensive ticket, a non-member who booked late, is £200. And we basically, like you, Marie, we're not trying to make a load of extra money. We're trying to make it break even on its own basis. And then that influences the venue you choose. So we're not going to some posh hotel somewhere. This is a Quaker meeting house we're using at the moment with venue rooms attached. The previous place we went was, I can't remember what it was. It was an arts centre or something, wasn't it? I can't remember what the previous.
It was a voluntary service organisation, like a community.
The stuff that doesn't need to have frills, we don't do, and it's entirely volunteer based. We give members 25% off the ticket price, and then we do early bird ticket pricing as well. So people can come to the conference, even if they don't get a community ticket, for 2 whole days for as little as 100. Early bird with 25% off was about £130 or something for a 2-day conference, which is pretty cheap by most business standards. And we set that as a goal. Other people who are, perhaps in more profitable businesses have the opportunity to buy a community donation ticket where they can pay over the top to help fund that community place. So we have some people who are in very, profitable businesses, this kind of thing, and they can pay extra to help that. So those are important choices to us. For the last 2 or 3 years, we've intentionally not had any speakers. We decided not to have a keynote address or anything like that, and just to have a big welcome, explain what's going on, and then get people going into the sessions. The other thing we're sort of playing with is, what else can we build around this that will help people without too much extra effort on our part? So last year we did a deal with a photographer, and we paid for a room for them, so we had a little bit of extra cost on the conference, and they offered headshots to people who wanted to have headshots for their website or their social media done. And that, some people took that up. We toyed last year. We had one person run a training session in the same venue the day before. So Martin Gilbraith, who some of you may have heard of, did an ICA training session. Next year, we're planning to formalize that. We've actually booked the venue, and we've booked the day before as well. Now, we won't cover all the money for that, but we're making a space. And I think we're getting this very idea of we do the absolute minimum we can to convene as much space as possible into which people can walk and do things. And that's our role. What they do in that space is very emergent and quite exciting and not entirely under our control. So those are the sort of lessons learned. And we've learned bits, and we're trying to do more of that. I think the next set of lessons we've got to learn is, how big could that be before it becomes a different kind of conference? And Helen and I were talking about this the other day. It's a very community feel thing at the moment, and still is, even at the sort of size we're at now. I suspect the feel is not that different to what Marie had in Belgium, even though it's not a different size. We're starting to talk now about, where are the lessons? Where did things start to crumble a bit because it was big and a little bit messy and stuff? So we're learning lessons about things like managing the safe space for people. We had some interesting feedback about race awareness in the space with the group. And so we're looking at, how can we, respond to that.
Right. Thank you. And
I'll let Marie go, and if I remember it, I'll come back in.
okay, let's see, Marie, lessons learned, or maybe things you've discovered.
Sure. I mean, I think so. Indeed, because we didn't have a track record, we had to make decisions. And I remember that because also we didn't have like a massive, also like we didn't have any sponsors or anyone bankrolling us. So we also had to make sure that this would not. I mean, the money was also a concern as well, to make sure that we break even and that we cover our costs. Certainly, we don't want to cause financial ruin for our chapter, a few years into its existence, less than 10 years into its existence. So we made a strategic choice to go small and to build from there, rather than to be overly ambitious. I think I'm very glad we did this, because we got a very quality, cozy event with some really great workshops and great participation and engagement. And at least this then gives us direction into which direction to go next. How big do we want it to be, or do we want to have separate kind of events for clients of facilitation and events for facilitators, and facilitators can just nerd out, if I can say, in terms of techniques and methods and so on. so for us, it was a definite choice to make it small and then take the temperature to build from there. I think this was a big learning point. I also want to come back to Miriam's question here, also in the chat. Any add-on before and after? I think it's also available in the link I sent to you, facilitationforum.eu. We created a sort of a digital goodie bag. So because we knew that our facilitators would probably have methods and additional resources to share, we made it all available in there. And then if we knew of, for example, I created a series of free learning events throughout the summer, people signed on to that. So we made that available and sort of like get together all in one point, a space where people would find all the resources for the methods that they had explored that day, but they had to fill in the evaluation questionnaire before they could get that link. So this is you know how difficult it is to get those evaluation forms, right? So this is the trade-off we did. You send your evaluation, you get the digital goodie bag, so to speak. So this is and it worked quite well, I think. So I can also recommend this little technique if that's helpful for anyone.
A nice carrot.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So I'm going to have to jump off, but I've passed the hosting over to Paul. I just want to say thank you so much for coming along to this session, and I will leave you to chat more, and hopefully I will see you all again soon. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and if you want, I can also start off by asking you a question, Paul, because I know we looked at this, and you also mentioned maintaining the cost low and so on. So what would you say you were looking for in that venue? So you said that each year you had booked perhaps different spaces and so on. I think you mentioned something about the furniture and how easily rearranged it is as well. What would you say are the sort of the key criteria that you were looking for, that you thought would support a conference of that size comfortably for you and your group?
Price was a sort of limit, so there's a boundary there that we weren't going to make. We weren't going to have the venue costs, because the venue cost is the primary cost of something like this. We knew we were aiming for a maximum ticket price of about £200, and like you, we had a break even, and I think our break even was about 70 or 80 people this last year. When we found ticketing went well above that, we added on more bits of the venue. So we booked another couple of rooms to make the quiet room and stuff. So had we only had 70 people, the venue was flexible enough that we could add a room on, we could have space, which was nice.
It's great if the venue is scalable like this, you can, adjust.
We were also quite a big client for that venue, which made us attractive to them. I think that actually helped, even though that wasn't part of the plan. What else did we do? I think we just wanted to have spaces that we could choose quite easily what was in them. So the big space in the middle, we use it for the big plenaries, and then the space in the middle was big enough that we'd get out some pinpoint boards or stuff like that, or people could do, I mean, they could have a dance workshop or whatever they wanted in there, things with moving around in that space. And then the other rooms, we just found that they were very helpful, this venue, in saying, in the next coffee break, I need room X to have all the tables taken down. And by the way, can you put them all back up at lunchtime? And the changeover was only like 20 minutes. If it was the 2 morning sessions, that's a 20-minute changeover on a coffee break, including the old workshop leader getting out and the new workshop leader getting in. So that was the only piece of logistics that was challenging at this size, because we were doing that across four strands, 4 threads. But we happen to have found this venue with massively helpful staff who will happily dive into a room and take all the tables down or put them all back up again with endless patience, it seems.
That's good. Yeah.
Miriam and Helle, anything that we've talked about you'd like to go deeper into, or other questions you have? I think you just put your microphones on now. There's only 4 of us here, so.
I've just been popping my questions in the chat as we went.
Yeah. Have we answered them, or have we missed any of them?
Yeah, I think you've answered them all.
Yeah, it's been really interesting hearing your take on things and how you've organised things and all the different different techniques and how creative you've been with different things. I quite like the idea of a silent disco.
They're doing a few of these sessions and discussions because one of the things we realised this year was interesting was we had the England and Wales conference, and as you know, that's got a few years of history in it. We knew the Belgium conference was coming up for the first time, which was new. There was the European conference in Berlin, which was different again. There was the Italian conference, which I think is the one that is most similar to what we do. What some of the things we do, we've copied what Gerardo did in Italy, and played with those ideas. In particular, the idea of making it really a sort of, it's the Facilitate conference, an event hosted by IAF England and Wales and Friends, as opposed to this is the IAF England and Wales conference, which some people said, well, that's a little bit more of a barrier perhaps for some people to get over if they're not already members. So that we followed on. And then in the same period, there was the American conference, which I think is why Renata was choosing it to today, which was very different. You know, that was held in New Mexico, Texas or something, in a Marriott hotel, you know, and was like $800 or $900 for 2 days. But that's North America. It's a completely different sort of marketplace and their set of expectations. The Indian do a vast conference, a big one, so do the Australians.
You know, you said you were online obviously during COVID, and you know, I kind of run a lot of online workshops, and you know, the challenges of having people have their cameras off and not engaging. You know, it's I'm quite new to this, and I like to see this. Is why I try to switch my camera on as much as possible, because it, you know, I find that engagement quite important. But obviously you have to appreciate people's needs. But yeah, how have you kind of overcome those kinds of challenges?
So you mean for online events, for example, you mean?
Yeah. In terms of trying to get people engaged, and you know, I find it a lot more difficult than in an in-person event where you've got, you know, you can actively engage with people.
It's funny because I was in a workshop just before this one where we had this exact conversation about people with cameras off. I've also, in the disability space, I've also learned to recognize and understand that sometimes people have their cameras off because of a number of things. I mean, Renate mentioned something in the chat about like the particular nature of today, and people not feeling like, you know, fantastic. So there's also things around, you know, like mental health and not being able to have the camera on because it's overwhelming and so on. So I've also kind of learned to respect and accept that, I would say, and to try to design sessions that are not going to guilt people into turning their cameras on if that's not something that they're in a position to do, but also to make it interactive and interesting enough. For example, people may not turn their cameras on when it's like a big group, but they will when it's a small breakout, because then it's like a courtesy to the people that you're around, that you're having a small conversation with. So
I do find in the breakouts to do more.
I'm curious, however, since we talk about the topic of online events, because obviously Paul's conference was the reason why it was in person, ours was also in person, but I'm curious also to see how can we, has there been any attempt, or is there a way that we can also use online events as a continuation, essentially, or as an extension of the in-person conference, not to create a hybrid conference necessarily, although I can appreciate how complicated that must be, but how can we also make sure that the energy that we harvest during the in-person conference can also be extended to have people stay connected through online events? And I don't know if that's something that you have explored actually, Paul, in the context of the IAF England and Wales conferences. A sort of after conference, but online, or a pre-conference online?
A lot of the general facilitation I do is either online, or it's because quite a lot of the customers I do a series of events with them. So I will have quite a few engagements I do where I have maybe an introductory online briefing, and then we'll have an in-person event, and then we might have a few online things in between, and then a big closer. And I think that works quite well if it's an extended engagement. All online, I think, is okay. Yeah, there's a problem of cameras on, cameras off. I think you just have to be as polite and inviting as you can be. I think if you're doing an online thing and you can also use something like a whiteboard or something like that as well, I actually think that helps the people who are then also not wanting to put the camera on, because they can have a presence with their voice and what they're putting on a whiteboard, on a mirror or mural or whatever it is, that partly replaces you not seeing their face, something like that.
I've done Padlet and stuff before, so that's quite a useful way to incorporate people. I think it's just getting over that discomfort yourself.
I think it's very different as to if it's a group you know from a group you don't know. The whole thing about if it's a group you work with regularly, I think there's much less of a barrier to having cameras on, or indeed to having cameras off. A lot of this, where it's uncomfortable, is if it's a complete cold group, they don't know each other, this kind of thing. And I think you just have to do the best you can and have things that people with cameras off can interact with, and a way of inviting people that they can contribute with their voice without their face being there. The most complicated thing we've ever done was the coming out of COVID hybrid conference, which I'll just put a link into a blog we wrote about it, which was vastly overambitious, considering none of us had ever done a hybrid conference and we didn't know the venue. But they had this massive vision of doing the conference where they would have 3 tracks over 2 days, one of which was always hybrid, one of which was fully in the room, and one of which was fully remote. It was ridiculously ambitious, and we got away with it. We also didn't have the hybrid facilities available in the venue because they were going to charge $2,000 or something to bring in an external provider. So we built the hybrid meeting system ourselves out of stuff that I had in a suitcase, because I'm also interested in AV systems. But that was also then a learning experience for everybody involved. We actually used it as a way of exploring how we could make hybrid good as facilitators and this kind of thing. So, we turn everything back into learning, don't we, in this game? I don't think we do it quite that way again, but that link gives you an idea of what we did and attempted to do there. Hel's talking about the VTI conference recently. They had an online conference before the main conference. What was that like, Helly?
Yeah, that was, it was my first one as well, because I'm still new to this area. It was good to have that option to do a bit of a pick. I did a bit of a pick and mix approach with it, just dipped into a couple of talks that I found quite interesting. And then obviously had the main conference to attend the whole day. So it kind of gave you that option to do that. And for people who are, unable to attend the main conference, it gave them that, that flavour, that ability to be able to do that. And I suppose it's been accessible to people who maybe couldn't afford to go to the full conference. So it was that other option. So yeah, it worked quite well.
It's quite different doing a conference where you've got speakers and then maybe Q&A, to doing workshops where you're trying to get everybody participating, isn't it? Miriam, you must have some deep insights into this. You've been doing this longer than the rest of us.
Any particular area of insights, or
what are your key tips on managing online or even hybrid? I don't know if you ever do hybrid, do you?
I don't do hybrid. I've never actually seen it done really well, and so I either do completely online or in person. And I suppose more of my work has, since COVID, has, each year there's more and more in person, and less online, although I still have online sessions. I have one tomorrow morning, but I don't enjoy them as much. I think I love being in the room. I love moving around the room. I love interacting with people. I love it when it's much more organic, and and I think that I always have a sense that when I'm online, I have to control everything a lot more.
Your phone dies, we'll wave you goodbye.
You're just managing everything, it's much tighter, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Whereas I think when I'm in person, I always have a sense that, you know, it can be a lot more fluid within the structure and yeah. But for me, like, I love the online after we've all met.
Yeah.
You know, I think that really has value because the ice is already broken. People already know, some people already know each other. There's already been a bit of networking going on and they want to keep that buzz going. So I think that's where the online can work really well.
Yeah.
uh,
And I bet they all turn on their cameras then, because then they know each other. They've already established rapport probably. So
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
But yeah, one of the things that I wanted to ask you, Paul and Marie, and Paul, we've already had a start.
We did a chat last week when we met. didn't we?
We started this conversation, and I'm always interested with conferences that have add-ons. You
Yeah.
know, as in something that's happening before to give value or to make it worthwhile for somebody to travel. And most of the conferences that I have attended or been involved in offer that.
Yeah.
And I know you trialed it last year, but was there much take up, or like, is it something people are looking for?
Martin asked if he could do it. We said that's fine. We have the conversation we're having is if we do that sort of, you know, pre-conference, come on a course day, what is its relationship to the conference? Are we endorsing those courses, which would imply that we're in some way vetting them? Do we handle the money for those, or do we make them separate? That's the conversation going on at the moment. I think what we're going to try next year is we're going to invite people we know and trust. So, you know, IAF members we know. So we've got a pretty good idea that what they're delivering is going to be, you know, quality. We've booked the space, but that doesn't cost us anything. We've reserved it. And then we're going to give them a deadline and say, would you like to fill one of those slots? And then what we will do is facilitate that with, because we'll have the venue relationship to say to Nikki at the Priory Rooms, okay, so we've agreed that Martin's going to do this. Martin will be in touch. And they will then set up that directly with him. But we will then advertise it as an add-on, even though the ticketing for that will be, you know, click here to go to the training conferences, and it'll be a separate Eventbrite ticket that Martin is handling and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We're a bit nervous about passing the money for those through the conference books, if you like.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think what they'll end up doing is putting a logo on it that says in association with Facilitate 2020.
Yeah, yeah.
And last Martin gave an extra discount for people who were coming to the conference. The other thing we've not talked about that may interest Maria is, I mentioned briefly in the middle of all that we've got this, people who come to us and said, you know, we could really do something better about race awareness, racial sensitivity awareness. There was a couple of things that happened in a couple of workshops. And you know, you look at yourself and you think, yeah, okay, this workshop is still pretty white. It's, you know, it's from a certain sector. Could we do better? So what we're talking about doing is, again, we can't tell people that they've got to come to a session on race and awareness, but we can convene the space. So the leadership team, or 3/4 of us, have done like a 2-afternoon online thing with a partner we found who we really quite like. And we're now working on a partnership with her, and she would run that and offer it before the conference in the months beforehand, and it would be in association with the conference. She's going to tweak the course so it will be race awareness for facilitators. So you'll be a group, you might not know each other, but you'll all be facilitators. And then she might run a day one the day before the conference, and so we're looking at ways of weaving a thread together. We haven't finalized all this yet, but it's what can we do without creating a load of work for ourselves that just convenes more spaces which people can step into, and the people who come will be the people who come, and that's part of our sort of generosity to them of promoting the power of facilitation without us having to do lots of work and, you know, vet a program and run it ourselves, this kind of thing. So we're just playing with that now. We did have the idea that we might run an online thing 6 months opposite the conference, almost like a retrospective, get the gang back together, or offer people the opportunity to get back together with people they'd met at the conference and look back at stuff. We didn't do it. We talked about it. I think everybody ran out of steam having run the conference. But we might go back to that idea. And then the big question is, do we offer to run the European conference in 2027, which will be the next one? And that's, we've just started to talk with Tamara and people about that. In which case, how do we blend what we've done with that? You know, so our community of friends who are not members of IAF feel as welcome at that and feel that they're offering that welcome to the European community as much as the members are. So these are the conversations we're now getting into.
Is that something you'd run back to back?
The European one would be a one-off. The other question with that is, if we're going to do the European one, that would probably mean finding a new venue because it would probably be bigger. And so that then raises the question, would we do something lighter in 26? Because it would take us longer to do a European conference to run up to it. But these are questions that we've only just started talking about. Helen's going to Turkey next week with the European leadership. So she'll have some of these very technical.
Yeah, interesting.
Lots of questions. And then what do we do with IAF Scotland and IAF Ireland? Why can't we do more with IAF Ireland and IAF Scotland? Because, you know, we're sort of in the same islands.
I know. I just got too busy, so I had to hand it over.
Yeah.
And it's and we used to meet in person.
Yeah.
And now it's
in Dublin,
all online. Yeah, we used to meet in Dublin because I used to get a free venue.
Yeah.
So that meant and free coffee. So it meant it didn't cost anything to run the sessions.
Taking the approach with Helen and with the new leadership of ask lots of questions of could we do something with it and see what lands, because you also then need somebody with the energy to go and do it.
I think that possibly IAF Ireland would be interested maybe in even if the conference, if it or even if it's a IAF UK conference, I would imagine that there would be goodwill towards, you know, having even a joint conference or something like that.
Yeah.
Because there are quite a few people involved in Ireland. Some who don't go to meetings, but a lot of whom don't hear about the UK meeting, you know. And it's, I suppose that's the hard part, isn't it? Trying to get the information out, you know.
There's 100 members of IAF in Scotland.
Yeah.
But the actual IAF group in Scotland is very tightly based around the group in Edinburgh.
Which begs the question, why are they members?
Wow.
And I mean, yeah, I know why I'm a member and I don't get too much, but you know, but I think it's an interesting.
How many members of IAF are there in Belgium? Do you know, Maria?
I think we have like 30-ish. 30-ish. And I think less than probably about, 5, 6, 7 of them were actually the attendees. So a lot of people actually were part of our community or were completely new who attended. And then later on, we saw a lot of these new faces in the next events that we organize in person in the following months as well. So we also saw like an influx of visitors from that as well.
We had 20 or 30 new members in the year between our 2023 and 2024 conference, which has never happened. We lost 8 and we gained about 38, I think.
Wow.
Now, what is this very strange group of 11 people who all joined from Leeds University? Some of them we've no idea who they are, but quite a few of them are people who've gone through that journey of getting in contact, becoming a friend, getting involved a bit, and then said, so why aren't I a member? You know, why did I join? And
is it the 30 under 30? You said university. Is it the young people?
No. I don't think
Okay.
so.
Mm.
Well, Jane, our chairman, is going to go and see Helly and the other 11 at Leeds
Yeah.
and find out, because they just appeared on the membership list out of nowhere. They hadn't
Interesting.
been at the conference. They just
Mm.
turned up. But we're doing a thing in the background. We have a PA for our team. She went through the member list, went through the profiles on the global website, which then gives you everybody's either their social media or their LinkedIn or this kind of thing. And then we got her to go through and basically track through all that to produce a list of all the members, but also something about them. Who did they work for? Where are they from? All the publicly available information. What was their LinkedIn profile? What did they say they did? And then we did a thing where we got everybody in the leadership team to go down the list and mark which people they knew or were in contact with. And was it, I know them really well, I work with them, or is I vaguely know who this person is? To see how much of the network of 100 and something members, people who pay their membership, we actually knew. And we actually found, I think it was 40 something % had been to one of the last 2 or 3 conferences. About a third each year came to the conference, but overall we're about 40% had been recently to a conference. And then we're very gently, the people who might know them a little bit are just warming up that relationship a little bit more, going back to relationships they had, but perhaps they haven't been in touch with them for some years, just to see whether there's people there who are just not aware.
Yeah.
The community part of the membership has now become much more vibrant than it was, say, 5 years ago when I first joined, and whether they're interested in getting more involved. But not as a recruitment drive, as again trying to frame it as a generosity thing, a welcome.
I think people do react well to being when somebody reaches out to them. And, you know, even at the conference, I mean, if you want to get like Scotland involved or Wales involved or Ireland involved for that matter, I mean, it might be worth saying, you know, would you like to nominate somebody to run a workshop at the next conference? And maybe that would generate some awareness, you know.
It's, you know, the walls of the community are already pretty permeable. We've got a new chair in Scotland, whose name I've now forgotten. Because Steve Yorkstone used to do it, but now he's on the global board. So I think it's just, you know, reaching out to these people and saying, what I'm trying to encourage in the England and Wales leadership team, because I'm probably going to offer to chair the England and Wales team next year, is whatever the question is, you know, how could we involve Scotland? How do we do this? Turn it round into something which is giving rather than taking. Work out not what you're trying to get from IAF Scotland Ireland, but what can we give? We've got 100+ people come to the conference. We've got this thing. If I can get the team to always be thinking in terms of what can we give rather than what can we get, I think that, just as a principle, starts to foster people's interest in, well, yes, this is interesting. It might have something for me. And I believe that then people get involved and feel they've got some presence in the community, and from that some people become members or decide to run workshops.
But it's quite a young profile. I mean, looking at that photograph that you showed us, there was a lot of young people
to get
in
younger, but it's not.
Probably I'm getting old too, but
well, you and I, Miriam, are maybe similar. Perhaps I couldn't possibly say we're obviously 20 years younger than me. But I mean, there are directions. I don't know about you, Maria. We've got a lot of freelancers. Got a growing number of in-house people, but it's through establishing a relationship with a particular organization. So we started with one person turned up from the UK Environment Agency, which is a subsidiary of the Department for the Environment. Loved it. Came back next year with 4 people. Next month, the Bristol group are hosting a meetup with the Environment Agency Facilitators Network in the Environment Agency's building with 50 people coming. And she's talking about bringing 20 people to the conference next year.
Wow.
So, we don't quite know what I'm there, but you know, you get an opportunity and you tug on the thread a bit. But we're really interested in expanding how many people we have in the community from in-house facilitation to balance up the freelancers a bit. And I'd like to see whether we can make it more attractive for people who work in private sector. People I know who work a lot in the private sector have much better built-in networks of support and stuff than even people in, say, public sector government. We've got a guy who's head of facilitation for Mace Construction. The fact that they have a head of facilitation in Mace Construction means he doesn't really need an external community to help feed him. He comes to give rather than to get. So, expanding down those avenues, I think, is where we're thinking about.
Yeah, I'm also reminded that because we wanted to attract a lot of clients of facilitation, some of whom also are people who are training their own staff to become facilitators or in-house facilitators. And we wanted to make sure that there wasn't a complete imbalance of facilitators to clients. And it's like, a ratio of like 1 to 5. And then the clients feeling a bit like, okay, we're like surrounded by facilitators and like,
and are they all just, buttering me up because they work,
Yeah, and so one thing I did is in the months leading up to the conference, I started actually building into my offers to my own clients to say, well, you'll get this training for this training in facilitation skills, and you get a free ticket to the thing. So I started actually building that, and as a small business, actually making the choice to embed that into my offers, because then I knew that these are people who are partial to facilitation. They want to learn more. It would be a great learning opportunity for them. And then it's an opportunity. I mean, I guess maybe I'm sponsoring the ticket or whatever, something like this. But, I know I'm bringing someone who would be a great member of this audience, and
so
then make sure that we don't have this imbalance.
Come to the conference.
Yeah. Essentially, as part of the package that they were paying for another service, I gave them I paid for their free ticket.
Oh, that I like. I'm very interested in that idea.
Yeah. And it was a bit of a gamble, but it really paid off, because I think also for me, it helps me make these like make sure that they feel valued, and perhaps I think I will there's a chance of repeat business for me in there, but also then I get to show a bit of my world to some of my coolest clients, and give them a chance to learn as well. So I knew it was going to be a good fit for them.
The showing your clients your world, I think, is a really interesting one, because when we did the 2019 conference, Miriam, which you were at, you were sitting 2 tables in front of me in the group. I realized I had one of my clients there, and he was the guy who he picked up 3 or 4 people, and he was very intentional about it. He was watching to see who he thought was good, got their contact details, and I know they've all had work from him. I've also had work from him carrying on, but I'm really pleased others. And in a sense, I've given him an inroad into people I know and trust, lead other workshops. And he sends proposals out to us as a group. And sometimes we confirm, who can manage this one? But it's also, not in this community so much, but in another community, I'm in an OD community, we found ourselves having to be really careful with the people who were providers, really emphasizing to them that we did not want them basically pitching to the potential clients at the event. And that was a really hard conversation to make clear to them, saying, these people won't come if all
they feel they're being sold to. No. And
so as a principle, don't.
we make it a principle for our workshop facilitators always, but I also realized because this is the first event and the tone has not been given yet, I was also taking a bit of a gamble, what if they're being pitched during the coffee break? But I mean, I think everybody knew and understood not to do something like that. So I think it's also why when you keep it small and you keep it community based with people that you can trust that this goes well. I think if the event were to be 3, 4, 5 times that size, it would be harder to manage this particular part.
The growth thing is actually the conversation we're having most at the moment is because we got feedback from the conference, we had a retrospective ourselves and this kind of thing. And one of the biggest threads is, if we look at these 5 or 6 things that we think are actually problems that we need to fix or tweak, they were all things that came out of it being bigger. And then you don't want to really over control it and strangle it, but because it's bigger, you actually have an increased responsibility to
Mm.
to find a way of addressing it. And so that's the conversation we're having now.
Yeah,
having more people is lovely, but it's not without its problems. I think we're running to time.
We're running out of time, but just one thing that's been going through my head, and that is that if you could somehow create a space for almost like a clinic space for young emerging facilitators who are maybe afraid to ask questions in terms of, will it be a stupid question or a silly question? And I wonder, would there be somewhere where you could pair up, maybe even if it was just for half an hour, an experienced facilitator with a newbie, and they can have a one-on-one conversation where they can ask anything they want to ask. And it's a private conversation, or maybe two newbies with one. So it's a really intimate space, and they can ask anything without it sounding stupid, if you know what I'm saying. Because, like
almost like a sort of mini mentoring eventy type thing.
Yeah, just for maybe 30 minutes. Ask here, you've got access to somebody who's got some experience. Ask them anything you want. If they have the answer, they'll give it to you.
I hadn't thought of doing it like that, but I quite like that idea. I thought of whether we should suggest to the program team that if we've now got multiple tracks, should we make one of the tracks not just skills and development, but facilitation 101. It's actually a series of sessions which are really,
you could do that as well.
But I think your idea is, I've not thought of that before, the idea that you could almost have a sort of either a pre-book a slot, ask me anything slot, and you pull in all your grey hair people and who'd be happy to basically be asked anything out of the blue.
But I do it in little intimate clusters in a room, like three groups of three or something like that, where you're much more inclined to ask a question in that sort of setting. It's just a thought.
The other one you could do, which has just occurred to me, but might be interesting, is you could do a Facilitation 101 session. So this is designed for people who are pretty new to facilitation, or maybe aren't even quite in it yet. And you could actually do a goldfish bowl. So you could actually put a couple of people in the middle who were the main respondents to start with. And you could do a goldfish bowl thing, where people come and sit in a chair if they want to ask a question. So everybody hears all the questions. But the actual conversation is just with 2 or 3 people in the middle. And then when they feel they've had their question answered, they're going to sit on the outside and observe it. Do it like that as well, couldn't you? That might work.
Yeah, I mean, that facilitation 101, it's interesting you even use that terminology, because Megan and I are we being recorded?
We are, but we can stop it.
Let's stop it.
Okay.